On November 7th, 1938, Ernst von Rath, a low-level German diplomat in Paris, was fatally shot by a 17-year-old Polish Jew named Herschel Grinspan. It changed the course of history. The Nazis used it as an excuse. Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels ordered German stormtroopers to carry out violent riots disguised as spontaneous demonstrations all over Germany and Austria. Local police and fire departments were told to stand down. In the face of the violence, the murder, the devastation, the change in the law, some Jews, even families, committed suicide. 7,500 Jewish shops were looted November the 9th and the 10th of 1938. 82 years ago, in Germany and Austria, 30,000 Jews were taken into custody. Thousands more were subjected to wanton violence and sadistic tortures. Close to 100 Jews were killed. And Kristallnacht forever became etched into the national and historical consciousness of the Jewish people. More than glass was smashed that night. Jewish life as we know it in the Western civilized world would forever be changed, irrevocably influenced. Jews were fined 1 billion marks. The law was bastardized, vandalized. The idea of civilization undermined. Bank accounts of Jews were restricted. Stock holdings seized. Jews were prohibited to buy and to sell real estate and no longer allowed to drive cars. This in a so-called civilized Western Europe. Can you believe that the November 11th New York Times editorial recognized synagogues were burned, shops sacked and looted, homes raided, businesses demolished? Could they not see that it was terrorism beyond endurance? Could they not take the sign of the boots of Nazis marching through as had been ordered, who set about their work with precision? Could they not decipher who the mobs really were and what nefarious ends they had in mind? As the 82nd anniversary of Kristallnacht passed this past week, I asked myself if we remember Zachor V'al Tishkach and we do not forget as often as we should. How will one generation teach the next the history of these terrifying moments and still uplift the strong and tenacious survivors and the spirit with which the Jewish people and Am Yisrael have reclaimed our lives heroically here in the United States, in Israel, and around the globe? As my teacher, Rabbi J.J. Schachter, has said, the survivors whom we honor each time we recount the history of the Holocaust, and the Kadoshim, the holy ones, who paid with their lives, the millions whose blood cries out, but whose voice cannot be heard. As was said by Gideon Hausner, the Attorney General of the State of Israel, who was the lead prosecutor against Adolf Eichmann in 1961. Each time we lift up our voice, each time we think of the survivors, each time we think of those who paid with their lives, we see how the new life of Am Yisrael has flourished, and that in the face of the darkness and recognizing the vacuum of humanity that existed, we, in these moments, recount history and recall their towering achievements. That after the night of the broken glass and after the night of the broken souls, that great, long, horrific night, that we commit to making a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name here on this earth, by and through the remembering, by and through the forgetting. It's in the Jewish fiber, it's in the Jewish soul to remember, recall, recount, to suffer in empathy, and to find soul energy in that historical recollecting. Jews have had to do this, unfortunately, throughout our history. As Rabbi Schachter taught, the place of Kristallnacht should be lifted higher in terms of the days of commemoration on the Jewish calendar, because throughout our history, Jews have chosen specific days on which to remember the massacres, the trials, the tribulations, the travails of our people, the murderous times, the blood that flowed, that for which we hope God will seek revenge. You know, at the end of the 12th century, in the year 1171, sometime around Pesach, Yitzchak ben Elazar of Blois in France was walking alongside the Loris River in his community. And he was carrying some hides that he had purchased from burghers in town at dusk. And when a Christian servant came galloping, approaching on a horse, he panicked and threw those hides that he had purchased. For at that time, they were not allowed to stretch them and to write sacred scrolls. Well, the horse became frightened, and that servant went directly to the local authority and said that he saw a Jew throw a corpse of a Christian child into the water. So the first blood libel on continental Europe, it having started in England a few years earlier, and then in June 1171, without a body having been produced, 33 Jews were burned at the stake for the crime of sacrificing a child in the river. The 20th of Sivan, Chaf Sivan, 1171. The Orleans community, the Jewish community there, heard about this bloody massacre and declared the 20th of Sivan a day of fasting, L'chol b'nei yamenu, for all Jews of our time. And they sent the letter as far as it could travel to the Jewish people everywhere they were dispersed. And so, in Sefer Zechirah of Reb Chaim of Bonn, the tragedy of Blois is described For that fateful Wednesday of 20 Sivan 1171, in fact, was the time that so many Kihilot started to feel the immediate pain of Christian anti-Semitism. And so, authorities in the Rhineland, beyond the French hills, said that 20 Sivan should become a day of prayer and a day of fasting. Now, over the years, the Jews of Western Europe would be expelled from those lands. And while Poland became quite a place to settle, and the Council of Four Lands, Vad Arba Aratzot, could help Jewish life thrive, there rose up a significant challenge to Jews feeling comfortable in their new lands of Eastern Europe. In 1648 and 1649, we know of the massacres, the Khmelnytsky massacres of that time. So many Jews paying with their lives, bloodshed again. And when the story was told, and they were trying to decide on a day to commemorate the historical tragedy and recount the lessons that could be learned and take care to respect the souls who were no longer able to voice their indictment, they learned that it was on the 20th of Sivan, where they assigned the 20th of Sivan, that same date, that the blood libel and the burning at the stake was done back in Blois in the 1170s. And that date continued to be a day of fasting and a day of prayer and a day of remembering, having been set by the Kehilot of Europe to recall and recount and remember those tragic days in Israel and those towering achievements of the lives of those who picked up and with faith started again from west to east. That's to say that choosing dates to make unique and for fasting on our calendar and for remembering and recalling the events of history on the Jewish calendar is a practice that we could indeed embrace when it comes to the date of Kristallnacht. While Holocaust heroism and remembrance has been set into the calendar in Nisan right after Passover, perhaps we need to lift Kristallnacht, November the 9th and the 10th, on the Gregorian calendar, to its proper place as a day of ceremony and recollection, of studying the genocidal process that included the vandalism of Jewish culture and the bastardization of law and civilization as we know it and would expect it to thrive. Kristallnacht needs to be on the map of Jewish memory. It needs to be a day that we not only remember the specific events of the looting and the killing and the arrests and Jewish rights being revoked, but as the beginning of the greatest tragedy, of the vacuum of humanity, of the millions of murders, of the camps moving forward, of the plans of the Nazis unfolding, as the inspiration for us to say, never again. We recount with love those who paid with their lives. We recall the spiritual rebellions and the physical ones too. We salute the decisions of those who moved quickly and physically took their families out of danger, and we empathize with those who could not believe that this is where the world was going. We should consider privileging Kristallnacht. And when it passed on November 9th and 10th this year, in 2020, 82 years since the date, I thought that we ought to recall that moment in time and say how incredible it is, the resilience that has been expressed around the globe by the survivors, by Am Yisrael, by Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel, and Jewish people everywhere around the globe. We shall commit to never again, for our people and for people everywhere,